Before we get to that, Roger Federer moment, we'll come to that in just a bit. But before that, let's start with the market action. Stocks tumbled across the world after US Federal Reserve hiked policy rates by 75 basis points, taking the cost of borrowing to its highest level in 14 years. But Indian markets managed a show of resilience. The Sensex slipped nearly 300 points, while the Nifty slumped nearly 80 points in a volatile session. Financial stocks were the worst hit. And the US Fed's hawkish commentary sent the Indian currency to a new low, crossing the 80 per dollar mark as the dollar index climbed to its highest level in 20 years. The rupee closed to its lowest level ever of 80.86 against the dollar in today's session. Lata Venkatesh is here joining us now to explain the rupee's fall and why the RBI didn't step in to prevent this depreciation.
Well, it's quite a historic day. For so long, the RBI had protected the 80 rupee to the dollar mark up until yesterday, as it were. And more hawkish than expected Fed has allowed the RBI to let the rupee breach that mark. In fact, it's done more. Today is perhaps, in intraday terms, at least one of the sharpest falls for the rupee in a day. All Asian currencies have fallen between 0.5% and 1%, and the rupee is at the higher end. It's fallen intraday by 1% thanks to this guidance. And it had to. I mean, this was a writing on the wall. Also, because of the China factor, the rupee has appreciated versus the Chinese currency considerably. From March, it required 12 rupees to buy a yuan. In July, you required 11 rupees 80 paise to buy a yuan. And as of yesterday, you required only 11 rupees 30 paise to buy a yuan. That's not good because we have the highest trade deficit with China. So the dollar is one reason, but the yuan is another big reason why the rupee had to be allowed to be depreciated at some point in time. And the question now in the market is, what will be the new pivot or low for the rupee? Will it get protected at 80.25? And how much will the RBI, support at the higher end? Will it be 81? Will it be 82? There are all kinds of debates, and the days to come will tell you that. The bond markets have also seen a significant fall for several reasons. US yields have gone to 3.54, 56. The Indian bonds didn't adjust. A weaker rupee also means expensive imports, and that also has a bond negative, higher inflation impact. So today there was this 10 basis point adjustment. The market is also veering around to the view that India's inclusion in the JPM bond index is not imminent at all, which means what is the reason to buy bonds right away? There are more inflationary reasons. The market is also adjusting to the fact that come September 30, a 50 basis hike from the RBI is more likely than 35. And that explains this 10 basis point rise in spot bond yields and a 20 basis point rise in the OIS market.
Well, thanks, Lata, for that. Now, after the US Fed, other global central banks have also swung into action. The Bank of England raised its benchmark rates by 50 basis points, while the Swiss National Bank hiked rates by 75 basis points. On the other hand, the Bank of Japan maintained status quo at ultra-low interest rates. Japan also intervened in the currency market to buy yen for the first time since 1998. The move comes after the yen has depreciated nearly 20% this year as US Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes strengthened the dollar. Well, here's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. JP Morgan's chairman, Jamie Dimon, says JP Morgan is one of the biggest users of blockchain, but adds that he remains a total skeptic on cryptocurrency. Speaking exclusively to Shereen Bhan, Dimon admitted that traditional banks are facing a lot of competition from fintech companies. He further said that there will be a lot of winners and losers in the fintech space.
You spoke about Bitcoin, Jamie. Given the kind of volatility that we're seeing there, what do you make of it? I mean, you've always been a bit of a skeptic, but do you foresee a significant decline from the levels that we're already at?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word a bit of a skeptic. I would say a total skeptic. But that's about a crypto token that you call a cryptocurrency that does nothing. We believe in blockchain, DeFi, ledgers, and some of these tokens that do something. So if a token can do something for you, like it's part of a smart contract or it gives you information on a timely basis that you want, that's got value. I mean, we're one of the bigger users of blockchain. So, but what I'm pointing out is that, at higher rates, you have to carry the cost of it. It has no natural income from it, and therefore that will affect it.
I want to talk to you about digitization and the competitive landscape in light of what we are seeing from fintech companies. We're seeing that play out in India. Of course, fintech companies not making any money at this point in time. But how do you read this, and what does that mean as far as JP Morgan's own plans are concerned going forward?
Fintech, you got to look at, it's a huge amount of investment in it. Some of them are already quite successful. PayPal, Square, Stripe, to name a few. Others are around the fringes, data, and a whole bunch of other services. And they're good competition. They also have very little regulation relative to someone like us, so they have advantages. But a lot of them aren't profitable. They're not all going to make it. And obviously, we can spend a lot of money building great systems.
Well, you can catch that entire conversation, that entire interview at 10 p.m. today right here on CNBC-TV18. Well, here's the big story now from the court corner. It's a setback for Fortis Health. The Supreme Court has refused to lift its stay order on Malaysia's IHH Healthcare's open offer. It has remanded the issue back to the Delhi High Court. The stock tanked 20% in early trade and ended lower by as much as 14%. Well, in fact, for more on that, Ekta Batra now joins us to help us decode what this order means for Fortis Healthcare.
The news of a stay on the open offer and a possible forensic audit is a setback for Fortis shareholders. First, a quick background of the deal that took place in 2018. The twists and turns for the Fortis sale began when the promoter-appointed Fortis board entered into a deal with TPG Manipal in March 2018, after which they agreed to consider other unsolicited bids, which eventually resulted in the board opting for the Sunil Munjal Berman bid in May. The institutional investors, unhappy with the promoter-led board, eventually reconstituted the Fortis board and decided to begin a fresh bidding process. In what was a highly publicized and, might I say, scrutinized bidding process, IHH's 4,000 crore bid was chosen over TPG Manipal by the board, taking into account recommendations from financial advisors such as Stancy and Upward Capital and legal advisors Luthra and Luthra and Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. The 26% open offer was triggered by IHH after they infused 4,000 crores in Fortis for 31% stake. The 3,350 crore open offer put on hold 4 days before it was expected to begin on a plea moved by Daiichi Sankyo. The delay in the open offer has thrown up a few questions, such as what does this mean for IHH? The Malaysian conglomerate, despite the delay in the open offer, according to the Fortis management, has been committed to Fortis. However, analysts point out concerns over a forensic audit and uncertainty over the open offer might make them look at Fortis as a possible M&A candidate. The other question is the shareholders. They've seen a delay in the open offer since close to 4 years. SEBI too had urged the courts in 2020 to allow the open offer to go ahead. Experts, however, point out that yes, while it is the right for shareholders, the open offer has to be put into context. In this case, with the validity of the deal in question, the open offer doesn't take precedence. Lastly, what about the Fortis stock and overall operations? While the stock has corrected today, it has given returns of over 90% when compared to the open offer price of 170 and the 52-week high that the stock was sitting at last week. In terms of performance as well, the hospital chain with over 30 medical facilities recorded a growth in both revenue and EBITDA since the IHH takeover, with Q1 FY23 seeing one of the best quarters for the hospital business. While Fortis has said they are seeking legal advice to decide the future course of action, going forward the street will closely watch factors such as a forensic audit, hospitals sustaining their performance, IHH's commitment when it comes to expansion plans, pending deals such as SRL Diagnostics, PE firms exiting, and lastly, Fortis being an M&A candidate itself.
Well, the centre is seeking a major overhaul of the regulatory framework of the Indian telecom and digital communication space. Now, the centre is planning to phase out the Indian Telegraph Act of 1885 with the new telecom bill, catering to the era of 5G, IoT and Industry 4.0. Now, the draft telecom bill, as per Ashwini Vaishnav's own deadline, was put out in the public domain within this week. It is open now for public comments for about a month now. The deadline for comments is October 20th. But what has been the need for a new bill? Well, the government argues that the telecom and digital communication industry has far outgrown the Telegraph Act. The government argues that the industry today boasts of 117 crore subscribers, accounting for 8% of the GDP. As per the government, and I quote here, India needs a legal framework attuned to the realities of the 21st century, unquote. But what are these key changes? Well, number one, the definition of telecom services has been expanded to also include OTT services. What that means essentially is that for the first time, services such as WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram will now be subject to regulation under the telecom regime. Number two, the draft bill allows the government to waive off charges and fees payable by telecom players. The government can waive these levies off in extraordinary situations of financial stress or to ensure consumer interest. Number three, the bill clearly recognizes the power of the government to assign spectrum not merely through auction but also through allocation. This would be the first time post the 2G verdict that the law clearly provides for allocation. Number four, under the draft bill, a telecom company under the IBC will have its spectrum revert back to the government in case of additional defaults. Number five, and this is hugely significant, the bill will give the government the power to block certain messages from being transmitted. Not just that, the bill also equips the centre to intercept any or a class of messages. The government has justified this power by citing national security. And finally, number six, the draft bill provides a legal backing to a uniform set of ROW or right-of-way rules to facilitate telecom infrastructure expansion. The industry, we understand, is taking time to study the bill and is yet to issue a comment.
There has been a demand for a long time that the OTT players also need to be in the ambit. And I think this bill really gets that into it. The second thing, which is extremely critical and important, and we've seen a historical trend where we had some challenges in terms of retrospective amendments. So I think this bill really puts that to bury to say that retrospect issues will not arise.
The theme which I understood from this draft bill, that it strengthens the power of the central government across different elements of the telecom operations of in India. So this really gives government flexibility to administrative fashion, in an administrative fashion, allocate spectrum.
Well, days after a loan recovery agent working on behalf of Mahindra Finance mowed down a pregnant woman in Jharkhand, Reserve Bank of India has acted against the company. The RBI has asked M&M Finance to immediately cease all recovery and repossession activity through outsourcing arrangements till further orders. Mahindra & Mahindra is in talks with investors to raise $500 million to bolster its electric vehicles. Sources say that the talks are on with several investors. A day after CBI arrested ABG Shipyard's CMD, the Enforcement Directorate has attached the company's assets of over 2,000 crore rupees in a money laundering case. The attached assets include company's shipyards in Gujarat, agricultural lands, and commercial and residential premises in Gujarat and Maharashtra. Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis said that the Navi Mumbai International Airport will be made functional by 2024. This will be the second international airport in Mumbai once it becomes operational. Foundation stone for the airport was laid by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi in February of 2018. Some respite for SpiceJet pilots as the company announces a 20% salary hike from October. Sources say the salary revision follows a 6% hike announced last month. We also learned that the company has received first tranche of funds under the Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme and expects the second tranche very soon. This comes 2 days after the airline sent 80 pilots on leave without pay for 3 months, citing cutting costs. The DGCA has extended 50% restriction on flights till 29th of October. The other newsmaker of the day, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has pledged over $1 billion towards tackling poverty, inequality and climate change. Speaking exclusively to Shereen Bhan, the co-chair of the foundation, Bill Gates, said that he's betting big on climate-smart crops and seeds innovation as the long-term solution to solving the world's food crisis.
Well, we're making a big commitment. We'll go through the numbers actually at the COP27 event in Egypt, that we're going to be a big funder in seed innovation. We're already one of the biggest, and we're making a substantial increase in that. We're also talking about, as we look at climate, how do you minimize the damage, and pointing this out, in climate adaptation, which is the getting ready for the extra heat. It doesn't get enough attention, and we're not as good at measuring which interventions are the most impactful for climate adaptation, but it's very urgent that we get going on that.
If I can ask you a question that often comes up in the context of this conversation, why are you buying up so much farmland in America?
Yeah, I own, through an investment office that invests in quite a few things, about 1/4,000th of the land in the U.S. So it's a very, distributed thing. There's not anyone who owns, much of that land. They've decided it's a good investment. That's very mechanized agriculture, so not that similar to, who are trying to help out in Africa. So no direct connection there, but, the money that I haven't spent through the foundation, all of it will go to the foundation. But in the meantime, we invest it, try to get returns so we can have as much to send to poor countries as possible.
Well, you can catch that entire interview with Bill Gates, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, at 9:30 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. Well, here's a quick look at some national headlines. National Investigation Agency and Enforcement Directorate arrest more than 100 leaders of the Popular Front of India over alleged terror links, conducts search operations across multiple states. PFI protests and accuses the union government of using agencies to silence dissenting voices. The Supreme Court reserved its verdict on a batch of petitions against the Karnataka High Court's order on hijab. The High Court had upheld the ban on wearing hijab in educational institutions in the state. RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat visited a mosque in national capital and met Chief Cleric of the All India Imam Organization. The closed-door meeting between Bhagwat and the cleric lasted over an hour. In international news, more than 1,400 people have been arrested all over Russia after protests erupted over President Putin's decision to call up more troops. 3 lakh people out of Russia's vast reserve of 25 million are being called up to fight the war in Ukraine. Addressing the United Nations General Assembly's yearly meeting, Ukrainian President Zelensky said, and I quote, "For us, this is the war for life."
I want to remind you that our country also has various means of destruction. To protect Russia and our people, we will certainly use all the means at our disposal. This is not a bluff.
Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky.
For trying to steal our territory.
You cannot seize a nation's territory by force. And the Kremlin is organizing a sham referendum to try to annex parts of Ukraine, an extremely significant violation of the UN Charter. This world should see these outrageous acts for what they are.
We cannot agree to a delayed war because it will be even hotter than the war now. For us, this is a war for life.
The Ukrainians aren't just defending their own country. They're defending our values and the security of the whole world. That's why we must act.
Russia decided to pave the way for other wars of annexation in Europe today and perhaps tomorrow in Asia or in Africa.
Meanwhile, legendary tennis player Roger Federer, who announced his retirement after an illustrious 25-year career, said that he would like to remain associated with the sport after hanging up his racket. Federer's last professional match will be a doubles alongside 22-time major winner Rafael Nadal at London's O2. The duo plays against Francis Tiafoe and Jack Sock of Team World on 23rd of September. CNBC's Tanya Breyer caught up with him to find out why he decided to step away now.
At one point, you have to take a decision in life, and sometimes it's good to have a deadline, you know. And for me, the moment it was taken, it was emotional. But then after that, I was able to feel relieved. And then it got stressful as I was trying to write a letter to the people to let them know that I'm officially retiring, because also I carried the weight with me and my team and my friends and family for probably a good two and a half months. So it's long. You don't want leaks, of course, to happen, because I want to be the first to tell the fans and the people.
Roger, of course, you played with Rafa, with Novak, with Andy in a golden era of tennis. What do you think you'll miss the most about it? And also, what's been the proudest moment for you personally?
I think a proud moment for me has been my longevity. Having been there for so long, having had the chance to just play on all these different courts many times and live through those emotions. Being a Wimbledon champion, obviously, is for me a very proud moment. Being world #1 is maybe the ultimate accomplishment. So I feel like those were big moments. I won the Olympic gold as well, Olympic silver here in London. Won the Davis Cup as well in Lille. Had everything I ever asked for happened. So and had so many tough opponents, you know, and that I was able to somehow evolve throughout. That was a great feeling as well.
And just finally, Roger, what's next for you?
Yes, I have a wonderful foundation that I started almost 20 years ago now. So I have lots of work there. I'm looking forward to seeing what the plans are for the future, as we always plan in the long term there. So that's not going to change for the time being, but let's look ahead. Now we can start to really properly plan and not always having to be flexible. Look, I'd like to stay in tennis in some way or another. I'm an ambassador to a lot of wonderful partners and brands.
Well, a bittersweet moment there for fans as he plays his last match alongside Rafael Nadal. But that's all the time that we have for. It's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates continue right here on CNBC TV 18.